Hello, ladies, and welcome back to Celebrate You. Today, it's a very, very special episode because we're going to talk about money. Yes, I know all of you are interested because we all have to deal with money. But more importantly, it's definitely not going to be a finance class. We're going to go into the psychology of money. And today, our guest, we're honored to have Dannielle Haig, and she is principal business psychologist at DH Consulting. So, Danny, welcome to the show, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Manny, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, I always like starting with, what's your story?
My life story. Well,
Yeah, like, what's your
well,
story? Tell us.
it's quite an interesting one, actually. Well, I mean, I don't know. You tell me whether it's interesting. It's different. It's varied. I actually wanted to be a singer when I was younger. I wanted to be in musical theatre, so on the stage, performing. And I was going to go to drama school when I was 18, and I ended up going to study classical ancient history at university instead. And as much as I loved learning about ancient Amazonian studies and Latin and Greek, weirdly, there weren't that many jobs out there for classical historians. So I decided it was an amazing time, but I'm not sure how much use it's been. But so after that, I decided to follow my other passion, which is kind of linked to ancient history because it's about understanding humans, human behavior throughout time. And so I went back to university and I studied psychology. Once I finished that, I ended up working in film. So I moved to 20th Century Fox, where I worked. Yeah, so I ended up working in their marketing department for close to 4 years, which was very interesting. And I learned a lot about people in working environments, basically. And because of that experience, I thought, oh, I want to learn about why people do very weird things in work. Like why do toxic environments come about, or why do people make the decisions that they do? So I went back to university and did another master's, but this time in business psychology. I also trained for 4 years as a psychotherapist, and I've also done training as a business coach. And now I work with organizations, Google, Facebook, and the likes, and all the way down to startups, all sorts of businesses, and help them and their staff understand their behaviors in the workplace so that they can be more effective, so that they can be, more content, they can have more successful careers, they can be better leaders, etc., etc. And so that's what I do now for a living, which I absolutely love, and I've been doing that for about 6 years now. Um, so it started out off on stage, and now I deliver workshops so it's like mini performances every day that I deliver to organizations. It used to be in house, so I could go and I'd literally be on stage talking to people, but now it's through a camera. So I kind of get to do the same thing, but just with different
Yeah,
content now.
awesome. Cool. And what interested you in understanding like psychology and human behavior?
Do you know what? I think that so I had uh, gosh, when I was younger, I was really insecure. I had like no self-esteem whatsoever. And I think that most people who study psychology want to understand more about themselves, to be honest. I think that's where it comes from. And then you end up getting interested in other people and you think, oh, that's why they're doing that, or that's why they say that. And then after a while, it just becomes kind of, I don't know, an obsession. Well, for me, it did anyway. And now it's, all that I live and breathe is psychology and understanding humans. But I think it definitely came from me understanding. I wanted to know why I felt I didn't fit in with the world, why I couldn't be the person I wanted to be, basically. And I think that through the psychotherapy training, through the psychology, I learned about myself so I could become who I wanted to be, basically. Yeah, exactly. And now I help as a coach other people become who they want to be. So I think that's generally where it comes from with most people with psychology. I think it's wanting to know about yourself first and then helping others.
Yes, as you talk about that, that reminded me of me. It's like, oh, that was me as well, like many years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
studied
did not
psychology?
study. No, I did not study psychology, but I did not go through I'm going to study psychology, but I became very, very interested in understanding human behavior so that I could understand myself. So I did a lot of reading. Then I went to a lot of seminars. So, and then it's like the more I studied, the more I wanted to study.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
amazing, isn't it? I think it's one of those topics, or it's a science that it's so curious because it's with us 24 hours a day. Like you can, if you want to analyze psychology or you want to do a psychological study, you can just look to yourself at any moment of the day and you can have a think about something or reflect on something. It's not like I don't know, mechanics or I don't know, engineering or any other kind of science where, or chemistry or whatever, where you have to sit and learn. You have your own case study with you all the time. It's you and the people around you. So it's quite a curious science, I think, and one that anybody could get interested in if they wanted to, in a
definitely.
something that's relevant to them.
Yeah. What I was very keen to understand from a psychology perspective, not from a personal development pop culture perspective,
Yeah, yeah,
was psychology and money.
yeah. Well, this is a really interesting topic, and it's something that I spend a lot of time teaching and trying to educate people about, which is the psychology behind your relationship with money. Because actually, every time you make any kind of financial decision, whether that is buying a coffee in the morning, whether that is what you buy at the supermarket, how you choose to like save your money, your lifetime plans, your pension plans, all of these things, every single thing that you decide to do has a psychological reason behind it. And most people don't know that. They think that they develop information about finance very anecdotally. So we generally learn from our parents and our siblings and our communities on how to behave with money. But that's not necessarily the best way to behave with money. And actually, we develop a lot of, bad habits because of that. So I spend a lot of time teaching people how to understand their relationship with money so that they can adjust it a little bit more. It's called financial well-being. Um, and it's been broken down into science and researched a lot actually by one of my old professors at my alma mater, University College London, um, Professor Adrian Furnham. He's one of the world's leading business psychologists, and he's done a huge amount of research into financial well-being, mainly because money is one of the biggest causes of unhappiness in people. It's one of the biggest causes of stress. It's one of the biggest reasons why people don't sleep at night or why they can't concentrate at the workplace is because of money and their relationships with it. So it's really important that people learn to understand that there is a psychology behind that relationship.
I'm like, yes. And then I was like, and I want to know more.
And that's all we've got time for. No.
I'm like, yeah, you caught my attention. I'm like, yes, I agree with you.
Well, basically,
Where do we start?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I was just going to say, where do we start? Because it is such a big topic and it's so much bigger than people realize. But essentially, I always say to people, you can break your financial well-being down into four key areas. Like straight away, I can ask you four questions. And depending on whether you say yes, 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 four times, or whether you say no to any of these questions, you know what kind of level of financial well-being you have. So we know that if you have financial well-being, then essentially you feel in control of your personal finances. But not only do you feel in control, you have confidence and the resources to kind of set and achieve financial goals. But this is all in two dimensions. It's both now and it's in the future. So I'm going to talk through like the four different elements, and it'd be great for everybody to sit and think, do I have this? Because if you don't have one of these four areas, and that's what you need to be thinking about to boost your financial well-being. So the first area is security in the present. So whether you feel like you have control over your day-to-day finances from month to month, you know what's coming in, you know what's going out, and you feel safe and secure in handling your money on a day-to-day basis. So that's the first element. The second element is feeling secure in the future. So that means that you would be capable of absorbing a financial shock. So you have a spare credit card, you have insurances, you have cash in the bank, a safety, a safety pot of money that makes you feel safe in case your car breaks down, you lose your job, you need, something, a medical emergency or something like that. So if you feel secure in the day to day and also secure in the future, then you're halfway there. So they are two of the elements of financial well-being. But then there are two more. So the second areas are freedom of choice. So you feel you have freedom of choice in the present. So that means you have financial freedom to make choices to enjoy your life. So you can spend money on your kids, on yourself. You can, donate some money to a charity, or you can do whatever beyond the day-to-day basics. You have some freedom of choice with your money to enjoy life however you see fit. And it's very personal financial well-being. And then freedom of choice in the future. So this is actually creating goals for the future, not for financial shock, but for whatever goal you want. So it could be your pension, it could be buying a house, it could be paying off a credit card, it could be going back to university, whatever it may be. You can make goals for the future as well, and you can actually feel confident that you can work towards those goals. So these are like the four areas that psychology and science tells us makes up financial well-being. So two in the present, two in the future, being in control now, being in control in the future, and then having choice on a day-to-day basis and having choice in the future with your financial goals. So that's how we measure in psychology financial well-being. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going on and on and on about this,
No,
but
it's
it's
fine.
really
Yeah,
important
it's super
because
important.
I think the most important thing to realize from those four elements is that actually they are completely personal. You may have noticed I didn't say financial well-being is earning this amount of money. Financial well-being is about having this much money in the bank, because it's just completely untrue. Financial well-being is how you feel with your money. So you could earn minimum wage and have all of those things covered. You don't want much in life. You're very happy with what you've got and you're content and you feel very safe, very secure. You could earn £1 million a year or $1 million a year and have extreme outgoings and have no control over your money and have terrible financial well-being and not be in control now or in the future, not be able to set goals. So actually your income and your savings are irrelevant to an extent. It's actually about your relationship with your finances, not what you earn, but how in control you feel about them and how confident you are learning about finance.
I
Does that
love
make
that
sense?
definition. Yes,
Oh,
yes, yes,
okay.
yes, because it's also different. It's the first time that I hear that definition, and I think it's
Oh,
great.
good.
Yeah, yeah, because I've heard like some definitions from, let's say, the financial services industry perspective, others from the personal development perspective, others from a mix of everything, but like a proper psychology definition of what's financial well-being, it's the first time that I see like present, future. Yeah,
It's
thank you.
really, really key. When I first learned about this myself, so I only started researching into it about 5 years ago, and it changed my entire relationship with money. Because to me, it's so simple. It's four very simple things you need to think about. And it doesn't mean like I could have a pay cut and still be able to live within those four areas,
Yeah.
or I could suddenly earn loads more and I'd still be okay. It doesn't really matter about what you earn to make you financially well. In financial services, it's all about earn more, 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 more. And in, personal development, it's like dream big and, visualize all of this money and all the money will come to you. And it's like, well, that's all very well and good. But whilst you're visualizing, if you can't sleep at night because you're so worried about paying bills, then what use is that? It's useless. So
Yeah.
actually, it's about understanding that psychology. Like, do I feel safe today? Will I be safe if something happens in the future? Like, can I, treat myself, even if it's a coffee or it's, giving a couple of pounds to charity or dollars to charity or whatever it might be, or, buying your kids a toy or whatever it is. And can I make myself goals? Do I feel comfortable enough to say, do you know what? I'm going to set myself a goal, whatever that is for me. It could be buying Necker Island. It could be I want $1,000 in my bank account, whatever it is, it's completely personal. And if you can do those, then you can rest easy, you can relax then. I really hate these pie in the sky, like, visualize
No.
abundance and wealth. And it's like, but where's it coming from?
Yeah.
Like, it's,
So
there isn't some money god out there who's, delivering, dropping money
so
into my account.
now that I heard this definition, I'm like, oh, we need like 10 episodes just talking to you. So the
Well,
first question that comes to my mind is this is an amazing framework because it's as simple as I imagine like a cross, that it's like on one,
yes, a quadrant.
yeah,
Yeah,
a
that's how
quadrant,
I
that's
show
the
it.
word,
Yeah,
quadrant. Yeah, on one side you have security and freedom, and then on the other one you have present and future, and you just play with that.
exactly. Exactly.
So, how do you recommend because like a concept is amazing. It's amazing when you hear of a new concept and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's an eye opener. But a concept on its own is not going to help you change. You have
Yes.
to embed it in your life. So, what do you recommend people to do to start embedding this concept and making
100%.
tangible changes in behavior?
Well, that's a really good question because there is a big difference between knowing information and acting on that information. It's like if you're on the verge of diabetes, but you still don't do anything about your diet. That happens all the time. Or smoking is bad for you, but you still smoke. It's the same reason why people win the lottery and suddenly have millions and millions of dollars in their bank account. And you think, oh my God, I'd never work again. And then that person ends up bankrupt in 2 years' time. And you think, how the hell did that happen? Like, how has that person spent all that money? And it's because it's your relationship, it's a behavior, and you learn behaviors to do with finances. It's the same reason why you know anything, but you don't act on it. I really want to go to the gym and get fit, but you wake up in the morning and decide not to go. It's like, why does that happen? Well,
Yes, that
it's
happens to
all,
me all the
yeah,
time.
well, it happened to me this morning, annoyingly. I know all of this information. I'm still just learning as much as everyone else is as I'm going along. But basically, there's a reason why we do this. So there's all sorts of reasons as to why we have these relationships with money. So there's our socioeconomic environment when we're growing up. This had a huge impact on us. Most things that we learn as humans, we learn in our formative years. So when we're children, we learn them from our parents, from our siblings, our community, our school. So if you grow up in an environment where your family say, don't trust banks, never put your money in a bank, then you're probably going to grow up thinking, I'm not going to trust banks, I won't put money in the bank. Or if you grow up thinking, oh, you've got to be a billionaire to invest in the stock market, or you've got to be a billionaire to invest in a business, or whatever it might be, then you're going to develop that information. So you've got to think about where you learn to navigate your finances, your behaviors, your skills, probably from cultural norms around money, and also your background, so your loved ones and how they brought you up. So that's one big factor. But then there's also all of these personal, individual attributes that we have on our own. So if you're a very confident person and you have a lot of self belief, then you will likely think, okay, do you know what? I'm going to learn more about financial, what I was going to say, like financial offerings. I'm going to learn about what the bank has to offer me or what savings options, or I'm going to start learning about interest rates and I'm going to start acting on them. But if you don't believe in yourself, you have no self efficacy, you have no self belief, then you think, oh, that's a bit too scary for me, so I'm going to not learn about that at all. So that has a huge impact. Then the decisions that we make are also based upon timing. So, for example, imagine if you've got no savings in the bank, but your car breaks down, but you need to get your car fixed and you need a credit card immediately, but you don't know anything about credit cards to that point. At that moment in time, because of like the emergency that has occurred, you will gain more knowledge from that particular decision context than you would just sitting reading a newspaper on a Sunday, for example. So there's all of this, and then there's knowledge and skills. So what you know and how you actually apply it. So if you're someone who is very action oriented, then you're probably going to apply knowledge a little bit more efficiently. If you are someone who is quite impulsive, just generally, then you're probably going to behave a bit differently with knowledge and money. You know, like my mum brought me up. She was always like, "Oh, life's too short. Spend the money." That was always her attitude. You know,
Yeah.
which is just so wrong. It's not the right attitude to have at all. But she would always say that kind of thing. Or, you know, every time that you get a paycheck, you should buy yourself something because that's why you're working, which is also not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Because, you know, saving money for the future is also good for you, as well as buying, I don't know, a new pair of shoes or whatever it might be. So all of these things essentially lead to what we do with our money. So you need to work out, where has my knowledge and skills come from? Like, what is necessarily good and what is bad? And don't always believe everything that you learn anecdotally, because generally speaking, it's rubbish. Like, it's not good. You need to get factual information. Google is our best friend in this situation. You know, the internet has an abundance of information for us to read. Just asking our loved ones is not necessarily the best way of getting the most up to date and useful information for us, because everyone has different financial statuses. We have no idea, generally speaking, what other people is going on with their banks and finances, right? So we need to just work for ourselves when it comes to that. So I think that that's the first thing, is to confront the lessons that you've learned and say, this might not be right, and say, okay, that's okay that that's not necessarily right. I can relearn new information and take it into your own hands. You know, don't just leave it to other people and trust what other people have to say, because that's not always true. Take it into your own hands and sit down. Whether, you know, it's like, I'm going to sit on Thursday evening, grab a glass of wine and spend an hour and a half looking on the internet, learning about you know, different savings rates or whatever it is, or credit cards or investments or whatever it is that you want to learn about. But just turn it into a thing, you know. And the more that you learn, the more knowledge you gain, the more confident you'll feel, and your relationship with economic resources will start to adjust. You'll feel a bit more in control. You'll know what's going on. Because if you don't know all the facts and you're just listening to other people and not necessarily learning it yourself, how can you ever really feel in control of your finances? I think that's a good question. Now, I've got loads of tips, but I don't want to just keep
Yes, that's what
rambling
I
at
was
you.
going to say. It is no, it is absolute. I'm like, I am way quieter than usual. That means that I'm like, oh my God, I'm paying like so much attention. Just like, listen. So at some point you talked about making mistakes and learning from the mistakes and then educating ourselves. So
Yeah.
I was in this place maybe, I don't know if 10 years ago, like many years ago. But many people are in this place right now that it's like, hey, I overused my credit card for whichever reason. Now I have like this bunch of debt. for the
Yeah.
credit card. It's not like I'm buying a house and I have a mortgage that it's like for, the security, or it's credit card debt that I just
Yeah.
used for something. And then now I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should have not used the credit card to go to Asia, to go to Bali, or to go
Yeah.
to, like South America, whatever is it that you use a credit card for. How can we apply the theory that you just shared with us in that context?
Well, I think that when it comes to debt, we get ourselves wound up massively. I think that no matter what, there is always a way out of debt. I don't believe there's a debt that you cannot get yourself out of. I think that if you are angry with yourself, or you're frustrated with yourself, or you're upset, then you need to have, first and foremost, a little bit more compassion towards yourself. So whatever it is, whatever you did at any given point, whether it's book that trip to Bali or buy, I don't know, a Birkin, whatever it was that you put on your credit card, forgive yourself first and foremost, because if it was what you wanted at the time. So I think having a bit of forgiveness is always very useful. Then you need to get a bit of a clear head about it, and this is when you need to start thinking about setting goals. So you need to sit down, rip the band-aid off, sit down and look clearly at your finances. No umming and ahhing, write down, what have you got, what have you spent, what do you need to earn, blah blah blah, and look at what is going on. You have to be deadly honest with yourself. Once you've done that, you can start making a plan. You can't make a plan if you're constantly got this nagging, oh my God, I really need to sort out this credit card situation, but I'm never ever looking at my credit card statement and I'm just kind of pretending it's not there. It's never going to get resolved. So you have to just say, do you know what? Today I am dealing with this situation. Once you've decided, you're going to be much more goal oriented. So you have a goal in mind, which is, I want to pay off this debt. So if you write all of this down, so you've got an actual plan. Once you've got the plan, then you need to start thinking about, how do you hold yourself to account? So maybe it means, right, I'm going to learn about what is available to me. Maybe I can get a loan that is cheaper to consolidate that credit card, and I can save money that way. Maybe it means getting, I don't know, a 0% transfer rate onto another credit card, seeing what you can do to minimize the impact of that debt. First things first. So that's the basic
Yeah,
technicalities that you
yeah,
need to do. And that requires confidence. You've got to think, right, I can find a way of resolving this situation. So you do all of the research. Then you need to apply some cognitive techniques. So I used to be terrible with money until I actually learned about these money scripts. Absolutely dreadful. I was, honestly, I got myself into so much debt, and for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And it took me a few years, but I sorted everything out. And now I have like top 0.1% credit score in the country. Very, really sorted
yeah.
myself out because I followed this step by step guide of looking at these four quadrants. And the reason why what I did was I applied, I put a goal in place, but then lots of mini goals. Because if you've got mini goals, they kind of give you that, you achieve something and you're like, oh, hey, like that feels good. I like that. I want to carry on and do that again.
Yeah.
So even if it's like monthly or 6 monthly goal, whatever it is. So it would be, I want to pay this much of this credit card off this month or next month. And you can think to yourself, like, oh, yeah, I could pay that off, or I could go out for dinner with my girlfriends, or I could, you know, maybe go and see my family or take that trip somewhere or whatever. So how do you hold yourself to account when that kind of situation happens? Or, it's your kid's birthday and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. First of all, when you're setting a goal, you must always look at, where are the pitfalls. So, like Christmases or birthdays or whatever it is, you need to prepare for those so they don't just suddenly jump out of the blue and you're like, oh my God, I'm so off track now. Prepare for them. They're
Prepare.
inevitable. They're going to happen. And I have something else to say about that later on, but that's for another comment. So once you've prepared for the worst, you know what's going on. So you know what the pitfalls are, like your children's birthdays or Christmas, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So once you've prepared for that, you then need to attach meaning to your behavior. Because if there's no meaning behind it, you can go off track. So I'll give you an example. I am obsessed with coffee. Like I love coffee.
Oh,
And I used to go to my office in the city in London, and
yeah,
I'd have about 4 coffees a day. One day I was looking at my finances and I realized that I was spending about £200 a month buying coffee
that's
when
a
there's
lot.
I know when there's free coffee in my office. But I saw it as this massive treat for me to be having this coffee. And I just thought that is the weirdest thing ever in the entire world. Why am I doing that? So I sat down, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to make my own coffee. And every day I'll put the equivalent of that money into a savings account. And by the end of the year, I'd I'd saved enough money to go on holiday instead of buying coffee.
Coffee.
So every day that I was like, oh my God, I want to go and buy a delicious coffee from down the road. And I'd say, no, because you're going to feel better in a year when you're on your lovely holiday instead. So I attached a meaning to my behavior. It's like an anchoring technique.
Yeah.
So that, and so imagine you've got yourself into this debt. You've been on this lovely holiday and thinking about how anxious and stressed you feel about this credit card debt. Imagine how free you will feel once you've paid the debt off. So if you feel like, oh, forget about paying off the credit card this month, I'm just going to pay the minimum repayment and I'm actually just going to go out shopping instead. Think, well, that will last for about 2 minutes, that joy. Then I'll feel guilty and I will still have the debt to deal with. But if I pay off the debt this month, I'll be closer to that feeling of freedom, that lightness, that incredible moment of, oh my God, I've done something amazing for myself. So attach meaning.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, you touched on fear and freedom, both.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about debt. But then when you said those two words, when you said fear, I was like, oh, this conversation is so relevant now. Because it may be not that it's just about debt, but it's what's the underlying feeling during the pandemic has been fear.
Yeah.
And there's fear of two things: fear of losing my health, fear of being in, like lockdown forever,
Yeah.
not having
Yeah.
freedom. But the third one that's affecting a lot of people, some of them unfortunately, like in a monetary basis, and others in a psychological basis, it's the fear of losing my source of income.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that fear of losing income?
Well, fear is the most powerful emotion that we feel. Um, and it's very important that we learn to master our control over fear just generally, because otherwise it just dictates our entire existence, our life, our decisions. Um, Fear and money go hand in hand because no matter what we want, as much as we'd love to live off grid and not be, in a consumerist world, I'm sure loads of people feel that way. And sometimes I do as well. Sadly, it's intrinsic to our existences. So we have to wrap our heads around it. I think that, first of all, when you're overly fearful of something, you actually tend to gravitate towards what you're scared of. It's a really weird, like psychological perversion whereby it's like if you're scared of being in a particular kind of relationship and then you're like, how have I ended up in the exact relationship that I never wanted? Or, being scared of losing your job. So you end up not sleeping. So you're not productive at work anymore. You lose your energy. You're demotivated. Your relationships break down and you end up losing your job. So the more scared you are about things, the more you can actually manifest the bad thing that you're scared of. So it's very important that you don't let fear take control. You have to start thinking about, what can I control in this situation? What you can control is your emotions and your behavior. That is literally the only two things that you can control in the entire world known to man. We can try and control other people. We all probably have, but you've probably realized you can't. It's impossible. You cannot control. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control pandemics. You cannot control governments. You can't control anything. You can only control your reaction to what is going on. Um, so, do you know what? I don't know whether people are going to lose their jobs or who's going to lose their jobs or whatever. But if you are going to lose your job, is there any point in you ruining your health with anxiety and everything else that is going on in anticipation of that moment? Or are you best to think, right, how can I do something about this situation? Let's consolidate what's going on with our finances right now. So, can we cut back some money and save a little bit more just in case? If you're in dire straits, can I sell something that I have? To make money so that I have a cushion of comfort and security. So if you think something's going to happen, or you're worried about it, think about that quadrant. Think about how preparing for an unexpected event in the future gives you that safety net whereby you can think, do you know what? If that happens, at least I've got so many months to plan and find a new job or do something else. So it's all about feeling in control. And that is what financial well-being is. So preparing for some kind of emergency eventuality, consolidating your finances, maybe pulling your belt in a little bit if you're concerned about what's going to go on. But essentially, I'm a strong believer in this, and it's something I try to live by on a daily basis. Do not fear what you do not know is going to happen. Our brains are incredible at predicting the worst outcomes in the entire world. And more often than not, they never happen. So we're just harming ourselves and not living in the present, worrying about some negative, unlikely prediction of the future. So you're best to put a consolidation plan in place and relax. Because I know that sounds really difficult and you might think like, that's insane. But trust me, what's the point in getting overwhelmed by something that you cannot control anyway?
That is mega powerful. And especially now that it's like you can hear, well, regardless of whether you're based in the UK, in Malaysia, in Mexico, in France, in the US, it doesn't matter where you're based at this point. That's a conversation that's been very relevant in the past 12 months, 18 months now. Yes. So what you've shared today is extremely powerful because it's also coming from a very informed point of view. It's not financial services biased point of view that it's focused towards financial goals. And it's not also the personal development view, but this is like a proper psychology kind of like point of view based on research. And like you've got like tons of years of experience in this as well. So
Yeah.
it's not just any psychologist. So just to kind of like recap the conversation, because like, we've covered a lot. So we've covered
Yes.
the four quadrants, security, freedom, present, future. And that's how I can ground myself.
Yeah.
Then we went into the whole conversation about how do I embed this, how I anchor this. We went through the example of debt, and we finished in fear in general, but more specifically, fear of losing my income.
Yeah.
How would you bring all this together in some final
It all, everything comes down to your thoughts. And this, I'm going to steal a bit of a quote. I'm going to paraphrase Mahatma Gandhi, because your thoughts become your behaviors become your habits, and your habits become your destiny. So think about what is going on internally. Are you living in a state of fear? Because when you're scared, that dictates your behaviors, that dictates your habits, that dictates your behaviors. You're basically leading yourself to a life of unhappiness and feeling out of control. You have to get your mind right when it comes to psychology, well, to do with anything, whether it's your finances, whether it's, I don't know, anything in your life. It all starts up here with your thought processes. So start to realize what you are in control of. You are in control of your behaviors. You are in control of your habits. Think about the four quadrants and think, right, where is my downfall here? But don't beat yourself up, because, we can start at any point in our lives, starting to think about changing these particular behaviors towards our finances. So have compassion, but hold yourself to account. There's no need beating yourself up, but do say, come on now, do I need to be buying this, or could I be saving this to make myself feel better for the future? Or whatever it might be, and realize that you are very capable. I think that people get so fearful of money. If you removed all emotion from money, it is so simple. It's just binary. It's black and white. It's numbers. It's mathematics. There's no emotion there. We attach the emotion to money, but there isn't anything there. I mean, first of all, money doesn't even really exist anymore. It's just on our
But
phones and on a piece
digital.
of plastic. Exactly. So don't attach emotion to something that isn't a living being, because you're giving it power over you. You have power over the money because it's not a living entity. And you need to control your relationship with this thing that's just black and white numbers. So once you start to see it as something that is just a number, it's not a thing. Money is not happiness. Money is not joy. Money just makes you feel safe. That's the feeling that you get from money. But if you want it to make you feel safe, you have to learn to work with it instead of against it. And you can do that. Just be confident, set yourself some goals, give yourself time to sit and learn information firsthand. Slowly but surely, your confidence will gain and you'll start to feel that safety that you need.
Cool. That's absolutely beautiful summary.
Oh,
Uh,
perfect.
Thank you. Um, I'm hooked. Like, I want to know. And then I am sure the rest of the ladies listening are as well. Where can we find more about you
About me, so
and what you, and the work you do, of course?
the work that I do. So obviously there's my website, which is www.danniellehaig.com, which I think you have. But then also add me on LinkedIn. That's where I post a lot of my articles, and I write lots of interviews and do all sorts of things. So you can learn more about it if you're interested in. Happily carry on and do another podcast if you want on further details. I have tons and tons. Maybe actually next time we could break it down into like 5 tips on how to boost your confidence with money or something like that. Very simple breakdown. But just reach out. On LinkedIn is probably my most active page to reach me on. And yeah, just get in touch. And I'll
Amazing.
like to hear from everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. It's been an absolute pleasure, like
Oh, I'm so
mega pleasure,
glad.
to talk to you and to learn so much from you. Like, properly very different approach to. I'm very practical, and I'm like, yeah, I kept nodding. And I was like, yeah, yeah.
That's the thing. When it's practical, there's no emotion. And that is when I feel great about. That's when I completely transform my relationship with money, like buying a house in London, doing all of these things. I never thought that would be possible for me until one day I thought, well, if everyone else is doing it, I can bloody do it too.
What do I
You've
need
just
to
got to
do? Yeah,
exactly, what do I need to do? And then I learnt and then I did it. And, it took a few years, but it got there. And anybody else can do that too. It's just about making that decision in your mind and realizing if anyone else can do it, you can do
I
it as
can.
well.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful way to end the episode. I am confident that we will have another one.
That would be amazing.
Yes. Thank you so much, Danny. And ladies, re-listen to the episode. Go through the concepts. Think about how you can apply them. Reach out to Danny. Reach out to me. Send us your questions. And properly, I think this is one of the most important episodes so far.
Yay.
And it impacts everyone. So properly review it, understand the concepts, and then apply them. Thank you, Danny, one more
Perfect.
time.
My
And
pleasure.
ladies, have a beautiful day and speak with you next week.